Welcome back to another episode of Two Witnesses Live. Man, what an exciting night. I had totally expected to be up late into the night hours. And, even after the way that it went, waking up to things being different. But today seems like an unusually peaceful day with the way things are going. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I was watching the election, and it seemed like every news source had different rates that they were calling it at.
Yeah.
And so I was seeing different numbers, hearing different numbers from different people, but I was primarily watching RSBN.
Yeah.
And then they called it, and it didn't really it looked kind of close, but they called the whole election for Trump, and it was. So, I kind of I quit watching because I wanted to just see when it got a lot more finalized, but didn't want to spend a ton of time watching every iteration,
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's amazing. They called it early. I mean, it was honestly, I'm just flabbergasted. I don't even know what to think with the way it went down. It felt like it was the hand of God moving. That's honestly what I felt like last night. It was decisive, and there was no messing around, and it was done early.
Yes. and I'm not hearing about it. Maybe there will be some that'll crop up somewhere in the country, but I'm not hearing about a lot of lawsuits and litigation.
Yeah.
Which is
me
nice.
Yeah. I was just scrolling through. I was looking at the news, looking at X, scrolling through the news feed, and you're right. There was a lot of memes and quotes about what could have been with
Right.
Kamala's her traditional speech. But man, it was just relatively she conceded today.
Yeah.
She did her concession speech, and everything just seems good.
I really that when Kamala conceded, that really gave me a lot of respect for her. And I've seen people on the right conceding to people on the left too.
Yeah.
And boy, I sure like that instead of lawsuits.
Right. I mean, that is such a that's what we've come to expect from elections. We didn't get that last year, and in a lot of cases the year before. But this year, so far, things are peaceful. Like there's, the people who lost have conceded. There's not a lot of inflammatory discussion, at least not that I've seen. I had expected things to go entirely different. I was expecting military involvement. You know what I mean? Because last time, there were guys on YouTube. So if we don't see, we still have January, right? We still have the inauguration. But so far it has not gone according to expectations. And I'm almost wondering if we're not going to see a lot of that going forward.
We might, but is something that also kind of caught my attention is different people, citizens, if you will, really we're all mixed up. We used to, years ago, we all kind of thought with a hive mind type of mentality.
Right.
If I watched my news, you watched your news, well, we all got the same thing, and we all had kind of the same thoughts.
Yeah.
And that in 2020 really changed. And people are scattered all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, we really saw people turning against each other in 2020.
Yeah.
That was when that division really started to ramp up. That was when I don't normally block people on Facebook, and 2020 was the first time I actually blocked somebody, and it was somebody whom I looked up to, I admired, and loved since I was a child. But they had gone so radical that I was just like, man, I just want to not see your comments now. That was the first time that ever happened in 2020.
I got in March of 2020, I felt there was something wrong, and I got very active in election integrity at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And it was everywhere you looked on the news, free and fair election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we were working at digging out what the real facts were, not the media.
Right.
Yeah. The media tells you what they want to tell you, but if you want the truth, you gotta do your homework.
Yeah.
And it was frightening at that time, actually, because, and all of us were, they had just imprisoned all the J6 folks, and we thought we were next in line.
Wow.
So we all went by different code names. None of us knew where each other lived.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Like real clandestine activities there.
It was. We've since, met up, some of us, and we've, as the country settled down, we got, who's this person I've been talking to for, 2 years? Where are they at?
Yeah.
But
did you ever finally meet up with these people that you were talking to?
Yeah, actually, I did. One of them, I knew him by Samwise.
Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
love it.
And we traveled to Missouri together to one of Lindell's Truth Summit is what that one was.
Oh yeah, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And he also campaigned for Secretary of State for Minnesota, and
sure,
was not party affiliated because, of course, he got blocked. There was garbage in the, in the Republican Party too. But he did very, very well in that. And there's others. I was told last night by another guy that I know through those efforts that he just won city council.
Huh.
So
wow,
that was kind of nice. It's really good to see people active.
Yeah. So your experience this time around, safe to say, much better.
Way better. Yeah. I just did, the election polling work. There we had, one minor oops. A ballot got mismarked, so we spoiled the ballot and gave him another one, and that was the totality of the problems. Is no big deal.
Yeah. I think the Supreme Court ruling had a massive effect. So, I mean, things were obviously a lot different this time, right? No global pandemic. But also the Supreme Court had ruled that there was a deadline. There was a clear deadline that there was going to be nothing delivered, at 3 a.m. in the morning. And a lot of things had subtly changed as a result of what had happened in 2020. There was a lot of preparation in the lawsuits. I think that there was so much of that stuff had taken place ahead of time to make for a peaceful night.
Right.
And then the way that it went to where, he won the popular vote, he won the Electoral College, which no Republican president has won the popular vote in a long time. I mean, like 20 years at least.
Was I'm wondering if it wasn't Reagan was the last one to win it. That would have been, 1980s?
Yeah, so 40 years.
Like 40 years, yeah.
40, wow. Yeah, I mean, so that was the hand of God moving.
Right.
Clearly this, in my opinion, was meant to be. He did a very good job speaking every single day. I mean, that guy is Donald Trump is the Energizer Bunny.
Yes.
He had gone, the last rally that I had watched, he was going on 60 days without taking any time off. Where Kamala was taking regular breaks, not talking, doing reduced, speaking engagements, and he was doing multiple rallies in a day. And shenanigans in between, stopping off at McDonald's to, just make fun of his opponent.
Getting shot at and then jumping on the garbage truck. But what? One of the things that I really like to see was the people, there's a lot of people that really kind of saw things as Democrat or Republican, and they have a certain perception of those parties and what that means.
Yeah.
And Trump and what he's doing is really neither.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
people on the right, when they saw the cheating and then they saw the Republicans were behind it just as much as the Democrats, and it was really kind of coming out of an financial elitist group.
Yeah.
And they were really for the people.
That's right.
There were plenty of Democrats and plenty of Republicans that are for the people.
Well, you know what's interesting is both Elon Musk and Donald Trump were Democrats previously. Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump's been a Republican for a while, like maybe 20 years, I want to say. But before that, he was a Democrat, and even when he had kind of switched over to the Republican Party, he still, gave to Democrats. And, he just gave equally. He gave to what he believed in and who he supported. He wasn't really, committed to either party, is my understanding. But Elon Musk, on the other hand, he had only ever voted Democrat up until, I think, this election. This was the first election to where he was very vocal about it. And, we had seen this party movement for the last 3 or 4 years with, I think, the Brandon Struck's walkaway movement that he had started, to where people were really kind of making the distinction that the Democratic Party no longer represented their values, and they were moving to the Republican side. And from a spiritual perspective, that's really interesting to consider that, because Brandon Struck, if people aren't aware, he's a homosexual. So how do you handle that from a Christian biblical perspective? The scripture speaks against homosexuality, and yet you see that there's this movement towards the right way, towards this, the separation from the Democrats, which, have been pushing that, traditionally were supported by, homosexuals. Same thing with, a lot of other people. There's, what's the guy's name? He's a big time talk show host. I think he purchased Locals. Also homosexual, but huge supporter of Trump. Yeah. And it reminds me of look, I grew up, there was a period of my time where people looked very down on that lifestyle. Yeah. And it was a thing that you would avoid people of that lifestyle. And while I don't agree with them, I've always had an issue with that. I don't want to speak inflammatory. I want people to understand that I love people, irregardless of that lifestyle. Look, the scripture clearly says that that's not going to benefit your life, but something that I think we need to be mindful of during this time, especially going into, the days ahead, is be observant of what God is doing. And clearly these people, in my opinion, are doing God's work, because those movements mattered. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think God is a forgiving God.
Some of the other, John F. Kennedy, that's and he's going to take a high position. And to me, he's almost like the second vice president. Maybe the first. I don't know. Depends on whether he could do as much or more work than Vance, or if Vance does more than him.
You mean Robert F. Kennedy?
Robert F. Kennedy. Yeah,
right. Yeah, RFK. Yeah, I get those mixed up too.
But Trump is really giving him some, some authority, and amongst Trump supporters, Robert was very, very popular.
Yeah, very influential.
So, here you've got people on the right loving the people on the left.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you remind me of these, there's a lot of people on TikTok and stuff who make these videos about the differences between Trump rallies versus Kamala rallies. Yeah. There was this guy that he would I don't think he really supported either one. He was just kind of making a point to where he would go to a Kamala rally wearing a Trump shirt, and they would pretty much lynch mob him. Like, like they wanted to physically hurt him, and his life was in danger there.
Yeah.
But then he'd do the same thing to where he would wear a Kamala Harris shirt and go to a Trump rally, and they would just embrace him and be like, "Come on in, you're welcome here," you know. And that what's a better illustration of love your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can see the mentality on one side to where it's like they're so high and mighty that there's no love for their neighbor. And then on the other side, you see that there is a strong love for your neighbor despite their sins.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you're a Kamala Harris supporter. Okay. Well, you're welcome here anyway. We love you.
I don't think that I absolutely see that there were some very interesting videos on that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the people on the left versus the people on the right being different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's how we access our news that's different.
It is, yeah.
Because, if you got everything from the mainstream media, and that's all the news you got, it gives you one perspective.
What do they call those low information individuals?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you got it from, say, independent media, then you'll hear people on the left, you'll hear people on the right, and they're a lot straighter shooters. The independent media.
Yeah.
They may disagree, but the facts are the facts, and
that's right.
That's what they're all using. In the independent media. Boy, that independent media sure grew, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And man, and I think COVID helped with that a lot. Like when I think of like Tim Pool, which was a big inspiration for the Two Witnesses live show, he's been a journalist for a really long time, but he really committed to YouTube in like 2020. Like his show was, if I remember correctly, he started his show during the pandemic, right around the time of the election. And he raised like $1 million in a day.
Wow.
Because he was like, look, there needs to be an equal voice, a voice of reason and truth. And that was kind of his platform.
Yeah.
Is let's consider all sides. Let's not just, speak to, because he's not a conservative. People like to label him as a conservative or a right-wing nut job. But he's very in the middle when it comes to left and right. If you ever watch his show and pay attention to the guests that he has on, he quite often has people that have, opinions opposite of his. And that's where a lot of the inspiration for Two Witnesses Live came from, is just like, I want to do that because I think that's that's the empathetic thing to do, is you want to have on your opponents so that you can hear their side. So that you can see things from their perspective. And man, he grew like wildfire during that pandemic. And that I think is representative of this new media, is a lot of that has taken place.
But isn't Jimmy Dore, the way Jimmy Dore was introduced to me was as a left-wing independent media.
Yeah.
I like listening to Jimmy Dore.
Oh, he is so mad at the left. I was listening to him last night talk. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But he's calling facts is what he's doing. It's not trying to keep everybody in the dark and mixed up and confused and fighting each other.
Right.
If you took independent media on the left, independent media on the right, put them in the same room, they're civil.
Yeah, of course.
It's when you get the mainstream media, that's where the division was occurring.
Yeah. And it kind of makes you want, I mean, I don't know if it makes you wonder, but it illustrates and highlights and exposes, just what's behind legacy media. That is controlled. Somebody above those people, because they're puppets. Yeah. And I think that was really illustrated. There was somebody who put together a collage, if you will, of all the legacy media sources repeating the same lines, and it's word
Yeah,
for word.
it
And
is.
like that is exposing how they were controlling the population. And you can see the effect that it has. Christopher and I used to talk about this, like, with the mark of the beast and the things that they're going to come up with in order to control people. They didn't need to. They were doing it with information. They were using information to control people, and I think that has been exposed now, and
Yeah.
it's given rise to this new media, which is speaking the truth, independent journalism.
Yeah. And one of the things that happened in Minnesota, where I'm from, and that's Ion Omar territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the Somali group in the state, which is quite large. Though the leaders within that, and most of the people in the community follow what their leaders say. They very much respect their views. But the leaders of the Somali group endorsed Trump.
Huh.
Yeah.
Go figure.
So
that was actually a big thing they were talking about last night. Is a lot of these people that they assumed were going to be shoo-ins for the Democratic Party weren't.
yeah. Right, and then they went a step further and they said, now don't just put Trump in office and give him nobody to work with. You need to vote Republican up and down the ballot.
That's right.
So that was a major chunk in Minnesota that went, that normally would go left, that went right.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is it changes my perspective on what the Great Tribulation is going to look like, because whether we're in the fourth seal or whether we're getting ready to go into the first seals being opened, I think we all agree we're in the end times. And it has not met expectation. I mean, like, so many of us had this Hollywood mentality of what it was going to be like. It started off with the rapture, like, oh, the rapture is going to be here because of the Revelation 12 sign. And then it's like, okay, so the rapture is not going to happen. Things are pretty bad. We must be round about that time in the rapture. And it feels like, I guess it depends on where you are in the world. But my experience here in the United States, way different than what I was expecting it to be. And now it makes me wonder, is like, do we have it wrong going forward for the next 3.5 years? I'm seriously wondering if I really need the 3.5 years worth of food that I've stored up. I'm thinking, like, Trump in office, Elon Musk, bringing in government efficiency, does inflation get fixed? I mean, when you think about it, now that highlights Revelation 6:6, where it says, in the midst of the 4 living creatures, I heard a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. That's limited to the 4 living creatures. So if we are in seal number 4, that's the end of the 4 living creatures. So it could totally line up with the Trump administration to where now things start to get fixed, to where inflation gets fixed. And, I could still see a tribulation to where now that, like, the legacy media has been exposed, the way that they control people have been exposed, the evil that has allowed to run rampant has been exposed, to where I could still see some tribulation. But what if it's from the perspective of righteousness and justice being served?
Yep.
Interesting.
It is. I was working on, as far as prepping for kind of survival, I was working really on a couple of fronts. One is hunting, gathering kind of thing, and the other is more of a farming type of approach.
Sure.
And I'm having fun with that. I
can imagine. That's the life right there, right?
It is.
I imagine that feels like this is what God intended. Like, this is what it was like in the garden.
I was just messing with it last year, and I probably got, 200-300 pounds of squash, all different varieties. Yeah. And there's like 1,000 varieties of squash.
Sure.
And I had just a little tiny garden. So I'm kind of figuring that maybe this next year I'll grow enough squash to bury my house.
Oh yeah, squash. We love squash. Particularly spaghetti squash is a favorite, because you can actually, like, use it like spaghetti, to where if you take a fork and string it out, you can put some red sauce on it and you got yourself a vegetarian spaghetti.
Wow. Yeah, well, it's a lot like a potato.
Yep.
And so about any way you could have a potato, you can have squash. But I got some that were like 30 to 40 pounds, green
Mm-hmm.
Hubbards. I got some small ones that were summer squash,
Nice.
in all different colors and sizes and shapes. And, uh, you know, it's just fun messing with stuff like that. And then when you're all done, you get to eat it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Talk about
totally.
playing with your food.
Yeah. Right. So how do you preserve? So squash is a good one to grow because it lasts a long time, right?
Yeah,
Especially the winter varieties. I mean, I literally have a spaghetti squash that's been sitting on my counter for 6 months.
yeah, yep. I've got what I do with a lot of them with the winter squash, those stay good on the counter a really long time.
Yeah.
The summer squash will rot on you or get
Mm.
hard or but those I just dehydrate them, cut them,
Hmm.
dice them up, dehydrate them, and then grab a handful, throw it in a pot of water, and start making a stew.
What a good idea. Nice.
Um,
Wow.
but everything's gotten churned up. If you look at the Democratic Party,
Mm-hmm.
that was all about the laborers.
Yeah.
Well, that's all being done by the right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look
Uh,
at how many unions and parties and groups have come out and voiced their support for Donald Trump.
yeah. Well, and the the Democrats opened the borders up. That's not good for American jobs.
Right. No, it's not.
It's good for the immigrants' jobs. They can get work here, but the American citizens are going to struggle.
Right.
And then so Trump closing up the border. That's good for jobs. The getting rid of the oil drilling
Yep.
versus bringing it back. There's lowering costs with producing our own oil.
I'm reminded of that scripture in the Apocrypha that talks about the mountains of resources that are dedicated for Christ when he comes back. I almost wonder if we're not seeing that now, because America is arguably has more oil than Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And then, with the exposure of these resources like the lithium in North Carolina, the quartz in North Carolina, I'm wondering if we're not starting to see the exposure of like all these resources that Christ is going to use during his administration, during the time that when he comes back, that 1,000-year reign.
Oh, that could be
Interesting, huh? Because
you know
that's what
I
it's dedicated for. It's just like I've given you the gold, the mountains of gold and copper and lead and stuff like that, for that time when he comes to build his kingdom.
right. I had some contact with the coal industry
Mm-hmm.
back before I retired. It tangentially, but I got information on it. And the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. has enormous amounts of coal,
Yeah.
gigantic amounts. I think I had heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, but in describing it, they said, "Oh yeah, America has, as it applies to coal, we're the Saudi Arabia of coal.
That's right.
We've got tons of it."
Yeah.
Um, and but yeah, so I see that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they didn't like Trump at all because he was
Mm.
kind of running counter to all their policies and everything that Republicans were trying to do,
Yeah.
and he kind of threw them out, and took over the Republican Party.
Yeah. Yeah, he did, honestly, he did exactly what I wanted him to do in 2016. Is we knew that there needed to be a change. You could feel that things were not right. Like you
Yeah,
could feel that like the wool was pulled over our eyes, that we were blind. I mean, we could see what they were doing kind of behind this, we saw the result of like men and women's bathrooms, little things like that were like, hang on a minute, at the rate that we're going, this is not going to be good. And then Trump came in there like a bombshell and just exposed everything. And that's
right.
exactly what it's like. That's what I wanted him to do when I voted for him. I'm like, this guy is not a politician. And he has a proven history of building great things. And I grew up watching him. He was such an empathetic person. It's just like,
Yeah.
I want to see this guy in charge, see what he does. And he did not disappoint.
No,
Democrats
no.
disappointed me, horrendously
Yeah.
disappointed.
Yeah, and I think at this point, just it's like Trump being a bull in a china shop or something, because both parties are just really confused as to who and what they are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
What,
know,
where are we now?
right, right. What do we stand for?
Yeah.
So, that was kind of an exciting thing, and it was, I don't, this election. Some people, if they woke up more recently as to what's going on, and there were people doing that, and there's people still waking up, people not awake yet as
Yeah.
to what was going on. But for others, it started years ago, and it's just still happening and still ebbing and flowing and changing.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of tribulation right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Transition's hard. Change is hard. And I keep coming back to, I think the tribulation is going to be different than we expected. I think we expected a lot more like famine and military involvement to where it's just like we're going to be running and hiding for our lives, hiding in the woods, having to eat mushrooms and berries and, hunt for our meat and stuff like that. And I'm getting the sense that it's probably not going to be like that, that it's going to be more like it's been. I almost wonder if like the worst part of it for how do I say this? I know I'm not clear here. I want to be clear on what it is that I feel like going forward. I don't want to say that the worst is behind us, because the scripture says that if it wasn't cut short, then no flesh would survive. But
Right.
how do you understand that combined with they'll be married and giving in marriage, like before, it'll be like the days of Noah and Lot. So how do you make those two fit? And I think what it is like the evil has been exposed. So now we're aware of what, the people like in Noah's day, the Nephilim and the evil running rampant and the men, of mighty power and, the men who are forming beast systems. And then I think it's almost like we're going into this transitionary period to where, yeah, that thing is still coming. What we imagine to be the worst part of the Great Tribulation is coming, but I think that it needs more time. So like so many people are still looking for the rapture. They're looking for Christ to return. I really get the sense that it's probably going to be in 3 years, because what I'm expecting to happen is we're going to go through this administration. There might be some rocky bump there. Thank God it went the way that it did. I mean, the fact that Trump is not going to be fighting with the Senate or the House, they're not going to be trying to impeach him constantly and prevent him from doing things. I think we're going to see two things. There's still going to be people who think he's the Antichrist, because he's probably going to come in and bring in some semblance of peace, which is what Trump does. He's made those claims that, as soon as he's elected, he'll make a call to Putin and it'll be done. I think people are going to use that as an occasion to say, see, he's making a peace covenant, and he's going to. I think we should go back and read that. I'm wondering if we haven't been misunderstanding that. He may very well be that guy, but thinking of him in light of like this evil person, I think we might have it wrong. Because I almost wonder if, so say he does that, say he makes those peace covenants, and what if, inflation starts to go down, we don't have a famine, you see this massive revival to where, the things that we're talking about, to where it's just like, people need to be more empathetic. You need to be like Christ. You want to love your neighbor as yourself like Christ did, and be way less egotistical and prideful. You're going to have those people that are like, no, he's the Antichrist. And they're like, they're not going to be loving. They're not going to be, exhibiting a mind like Christ. They're not going to be empathetic. You're going to start seeing that separation. And that's kind of what I'm expecting for the Great Tribulation, is this, we're going to see this falling away of those who are anti-Christ, the spirit of antichrist, meaning they're not empathetical, they're egotistical. And then you're going to see these people who are like more like a Trump rally, to where it's like, well, everybody's welcome. Let's just love one another and see what we need to do to fix stuff.
I think that very well could be the case. Because First of all, I don't ascribe to the Hollywood version of Christianity. Whatever they think it is, I'm not buying that. I'll take the biblical version.
Exactly.
The but some things we may have really it's hard to get a clear understanding until it's in the rearview mirror.
That's
You know,
exactly right.
our famine, for instance, might be. You remember how hard it was for people to buy food?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the money to buy food,
Yeah.
and maybe that is the famine.
Mm. Hmm.
I don't know. You got to
Like
look
maybe
at
the famine's behind us now.
Well, once prices come back down and people can readily afford food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It is still expensive.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that start. Although the markets were crazy today, man. The cryptocurrency and the markets were just soaring now that Trump is in office. And that's one of the things that really was beneficial during his administration is those markets were really active. And they haven't been active for the last 4 years.
Wow,
They have just barely moved because I did a lot of cryptocurrency trading during Trump's administration, and I made out like a bandit.
Yeah.
I tried doing that during this previous administration, and I lost a lot of money. I just gave up on it. I'm like, nope, I'm done.
I retired in 7-8 years ago, so
Mm-hmm.
I got to manage my retirement, which is a lot of stocks.
Yeah.
I got to manage that under both Trump and Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And under Trump, we were comfortable. We could, afford things pretty well.
Yeah.
Under Biden, you're like, we can't get this, we can't get that, because just nothing was moving.
Yeah.
And it was, and there were a lot of other people, I'm sure, in the same spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that, I think we're going to have to really watch things close and really keep an open mind as to what the scriptures say.
Yeah.
Because I think we probably got plugged with a bunch of garbage in our head from kind of the Hollywood stuff.
Makes sense. I mean, Christ reiterated, "He that has eyes to see and ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches." It's like, this is a time for observation. This is not a time to think you know it all. It's a time to, okay, let's observe what's happening and see where we are in the scripture.
Right.
Which, man, I'm excited. I'm really excited for the days ahead.
I am too. Yeah. And I cry on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
I'm really liking seeing that all these different groups of people that had kind of sequestered from each other and were lobbing rotten tomatoes at each other, kind of thing. They're all mixed up now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Although I am in an area that is heavily Democratic, so I still have a lot of people throwing rotten tomatoes. Yeah, the Northwest is not known for its conservative values, which it's funny because the area that I actually live in, there's a lot of people that have those values. I mean, like farmers, two Second Amendment enthusiasts in this area. It's unfortunately it's like the big cities that seem to control the policies in these areas.
Yes, that's the way it is in Minnesota. We're considered a blue state, but other than 5 cities,
Mm-hmm.
which Minneapolis, St. Paul,
Mm-hmm.
Duluth, Rochester, and St. Cloud, we're red. We are red as red can be.
Yeah.
And our Democrats here in this state are conservative Democrats. We're actually more conservative in this state than red states are.
Yeah. Interesting.
It is.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, boy, I'll tell you, it was quite a night.
Yes, it was.
I'm really kind of glad to see, because of the situation. If it was the old Republican and Democrat parties of old, it would bother me that the Republicans have the House, Senate, and presidency.
Agreed.
But
that's a really good point. Like, that's something I've actually been afraid of in the past, of like what happens if one side or the other gets complete control.
Right.
Whether you like Trump or you hate him, I believe this is God's doing, because you saw, which obviously you guys know what I think. So I think that Trump is God's man. So I'm excited that he's able to actually do the things that he wanted to do that excited me in his first term when he was 45.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And as mixed up as the Republican Party is right now, and everybody's coming from every walk. It's, do they support the people is really,
that's right,
what it comes down to.
And he really does. A lot of the arguments that people have, like, oh no, he's going to build the wall now, and immigration, nobody's ever going to be allowed to get back. That's not true. That's not. He will build the wall, but it is so that there is a controlled influx of people who want to come into this country, so that we can identify the terrorists, the murderers, the people who we've kicked out, and only allow in the people who genuinely should be here. So I think people who have that mentality should ask themselves, do you want the drugs coming through? Do you want the sex trade to be the biggest money-making trade that there is in America? Because that's true right now, is America is the largest consumer of the sex trade. Do you want the fentanyl to come freely across the border? I mean, like, these are the things that, like, he's proposing to stop. And you have to have a wall to do that. You have to have some kind of a filter.
You do. And I think too that in controlling, because immigrants, when they come in, they're going to need social programs until they can get acclimated, learn the language, get a job, before they can really work into the culture. Yeah. And when it's unbridled on the number that come through, we have, it really tightens the budgets that can go to, we've got big time homeless problems.
Yeah.
Of American citizens.
Yep.
And, and there's no money left in the budget because we just brought in unbelievable amount of immigrants.
That's right.
We're trying to help everybody, and really in the end helping nobody.
That's right. The administration that has been in there for the last couple of years are terrible governors, terrible with their policies, and they have caused massive damage. I truly believe that this new incoming administration is full of good governors. Trump has a proven history. Elon has a proven history. RFK has a proven history. I'm expecting America to get healthy again. I'm expecting the government to have less overreach. I'm expecting the homeless problem to be fixed. Have you heard Trump's plan for solving homelessness? I love it. It hasn't been forefront for the last couple of months, but he's got a really good plan for dealing with homelessness.
I have not. I would like to hear it.
My understanding is he wants to dedicate areas and hire like mental health professionals, drug rehab professionals, and make it more of a priority from the federal level to help people to address the problems that make them homeless. Get them, right. If they have mental issues, get them mental help. If they have addiction issues, get them addiction help. If they have financial issues, help them find work. So it's just like address the things that are making people homeless, which is in stark contrast to places like Portland and San Diego, where it's just like, let's just make drugs available to people and worsen their situation, Right. Because Portland it's a drug-free zone. You literally, any drug is legal and you can buy it from the government. That's ridiculous. Who ever heard of such a thing?
That sounds a lot like what I personally call the Utah solution to homelessness. And the reason why is I think it was introduced first in Utah, and it was liked by Democrats and Republicans at the time. And it's an older program, but it works. Yeah. They kind of create communities of these tiny houses. Mm-hmm. And if you're homeless, you can go into one of those tiny houses, and then the social worker, the drug rehab, all these different services,
Mm-hmm.
they can go through an entire kind of city with
Amazing.
walking a block, and they
Wow.
check with them, and they know them, set goals for them that are appropriate to the individual.
Sure.
And
Huh.
and as long as they, stay on track, which they generally do,
Yeah.
they've got, food, they've got showers, they've got an address, they've got the kinds of things there they need in order to be able to put together a life, and they could stay there as long as they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, as they were able to better handle their life, they wanted a nicer place to live, so they would
Sure.
move out essentially on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes
And
sense.
the recidivism was very low,
Hmm.
10%. Uh,
Wow.
it was phenomenal, and it more or less was kind of eradicating homelessness.
That's awesome.
It
Yeah.
is.
I imagine that's probably tantamount to the plan that he has. May even be informing his decision, because he gets a lot of that kind of stuff from looking at that, what works and what doesn't work, which is what a good governor should do. And we haven't been seeing that. We've been seeing people with other agendas making decisions that are clearly terrible decisions, and you could see the effects of them. So
Yep.
yeah.
So I don't know. I'm very excited, and boy, it's just amazing with all this turmoil, how little turmoil there was.
Yeah.
I, I'm surprised.
Like, has the election happened for real?
Yeah, exactly.
This was not what I expected. More riots and summers of love, winters of love. You know what I mean? It's just like mostly peaceful protests.
I thought we were I thought we were supposed to have a civil war thrown in there.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It could still happen. I mean, like, we still have several months ahead, but no, this is awesome. I'm very thankful that it went this way, and I hope there's more of it.
Did you see the unknown prophet today?
Oh, that was a good one. His vision about the volcano, and now's and that's kind of informing that was, got me thinking today. That's like, maybe we've got it all wrong. Maybe we've completely misunderstood the Great Tribulation, at least the first part of it. I can imagine that there will, at some point in time, there will be the part where it's so bad that if God didn't shorten the time, no flesh would survive. I just don't think we're quite there yet.
No, I'm kind of wondering if, because we've got this solar problem going on, the sun.
Yep.
I'm kind of skipping around. I should stay with the unknown prophet, but the volcano shoots up and lava flows out kind of two sides,
Mm-hmm.
and it keeps flowing all the way to the sea, going one direction, burning everything in its path.
Yeah.
And in the other side, it just stayed cool and cooled off.
Mm-hmm.
And the lava was the word of truth, God's word.
Yeah.
And just going through the land and getting rid of everything evil in its path on one side. And then I was understanding anyway from his show that the side that it cooled were kind of lukewarm believers that really weren't active in the word and weren't doing what they could to spread the word, share it.
Yeah. That reminds me of Zechariah 5 with the curse that goes throughout the whole earth. Goes into and it's written on one side is the thieves, on the other side is the perjurers, and it goes into their homes and burns them down, cinders, pillars and all.
Yeah.
So that same kind of imagery with the lava flowing through the towns and just burning up. It's just like we're going to see the truth like we've never seen it before. And I think what you started with when your first appearance on the show, identifying narcissism, I really think that we're in that point in 2 Thessalonians 2. Matter of fact, I might even actually do some work on that on my timeline. I think we may actually be there to where the falling away reveals the man of sin, the son of perdition. It feels like we're there. like being able to identify that as like the first sin, like that God complex mentality that people get,
Yep.
that pride that goes before destruction, that haughty spirit that goes before a great fall, where it feels like we're now entering in that time, and it feels like we've been prepared. I know there's many of us that feel like we've been prepared our entire lives. I know I do.
Yep.
I feel more fulfilled today than I've ever felt my entire life.
Same.
I feel like I'm doing what God raised me to do. Just sit
Yep.
here and complain on the internet.
Well, I feel like for my life, I was wrestling with and never quite getting my hands around it, the narcissism and empaths. And
Yeah.
then here in recent times, it's just coming together, and I want to just absolutely rip the scripture apart and look for
100%.
that.
Yeah. I mean, like, can you imagine? It's just like being able to identify these attributes, these characteristics, label them, and know what to do. It's
Yeah.
like that's word of wisdom, word of knowledge, word of wisdom. It's just like the knowledge is you understand it, and the wisdom is what to do about it.
Right.
So,
Yep.
yeah, exciting days ahead. I see a lot of that. I see a lot of like, it's just like even with people we have on the program, it's like we should have a requirement. You have to be empathetic. Number one requirement is empathy. We practice empathy. Practice listening. Geez, how do we do that? That'd be a good policy too. It's just, I'm sorry you're not being empathetic enough. Hang up. You're fired.
Whack-a-mole. Boom, down you go.
Yeah. Come back when you're more empathetic.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, that was a thought. What the impression I got from Hollywood was that in the Great Tribulation, that the population kind of did a very linear pattern all the way down to nothing, and if God didn't stop it early, there wouldn't be anything left. But it was a very linear decline.
Yeah.
And I'm not really convinced that there's any linear decline to it. What if there's not really a whole lot of decline until, the Bible talks about big segments of the population dying off, under certain seals or bowls. But we could maybe we've got the solar issue too.
Yeah.
And what if there's a big solar, damage that occurs, and that's where, if he didn't come when he did, the sun was going to knock the earth right out.
100%. Yeah, I totally think that's a lot of what Ben Davidson from Suspicious Observers is talking about is that day is coming. Currently, the projected day is, 2040. But there's definitely indications that it is speeding up and it could be here sooner. And he's said as early as 2027, 2028. And I think that fits the timeline better to where, we have time now for, there's, things are being exposed. The man of sin, the son of perdition has been revealed. Now we get to go fight that for a little while, go through the town, burn some houses to the ground. And then, there's some people who, there's some people who are still dealing with, consequences of, things that happened during, 2020 to 2024, maybe things they did that weren't so great for their body, for their health. I mean, how cool is it that RFK is on with the Trump team, focusing on health?
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, like let's get our food supply healthy again, right? Let's get the stuff that's killing people out of the water. Let's get the stuff that's giving cancer out of our food.
I am so thankful for him.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. Exciting times ahead. But I don't think it's going to be anything that we thought until later on. Then we're going to start seeing the weather. And I think that's the wrath. I think those weather things, that's what we're saved from. We're saved from the wrath to come.
Yeah. Yeah, so. I think that could be. Yep. And I think with, I'm forgetting his name. Dave, was it, from the Solar Channel?
Ben,
that's right. Yeah, with Ben, I think come like 2027, 2028, he starts having, there's a 3% chance or a 5% chance that it could all happen here. But the calculated date is out at like 2040, but that keeps shifting.
Yeah.
Too.
Yep.
And
that's right.
we're dealing with science and numbers, and their errors happen in the calculations.
Mm,
So, God's word doesn't have errors,
that's right.
but that may be a better predictor of when that big solar problem's going to happen
Yeah, agreed.
than science right now.
I think so. I think you're right. Well, man, this has been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of people asking where Christopher is. I forgot to mention in the beginning. We've said it the last couple of nights. So Christopher has started his own ministry, Christopher M. Brock Ministries. He is focusing on that right now. His show is actually in an hour. So he's still going on at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think I forgot to put the link in the description last night, but I did post it on the wall. I'll post it on our community wall so you guys can find him. So be sure to go watch his show. He's doing that in an hour or so. But yeah, so we've started a second channel. We've started a second show. So Christopher's focusing on that, and I'm focusing on building Two Witnesses Live now. We've got some cool guests lined up. We have a gentleman coming on, I think, tomorrow, who he was on the debate recently with us. That was the Yosplane gentleman. He's coming on, I believe, tomorrow. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And then we have another gentleman coming on Friday who actually is a good friend of mine, one of my most favorite people on the entire planet. I actually went to college with him. He's hilarious. He's funny. I hope he's still funny. He used to do a lot of pranks in college. Man, I could talk about some of the stuff he did. He had the entire campus of people doing stuff.
Oh, I can't wait till Friday to hear some of that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So he's also an author now. He's a big time family man. He has a huge family, a family of variety. From all, he's I think he's adopted several of his children. I haven't caught up with him in a long time. So hopefully we're going to catch up tomorrow, but we may get caught up for the first time on Friday. So it could be a very interesting show. But he's an author. He's actually written a book, kind of a life experiences memoir of things that he's been through, lessons that he's learned. I believe he's a public speaker now, too. He's working on a company that helps people with public speaking. So exciting times ahead. It's going to be some fun guests. So, yeah, so that's what I'm focusing on is Two Witnesses Live, and Christopher is working on building Christopher M. Brock Ministries. So we're still friends. We still talk on a regular basis. So if anybody thought there was anything, amongst us, we're good. We love each other. We're still friends. Things are fine. So yeah, so be sure to go watch his show in an hour. And with that, that's all I got. You got anything, Paul?
No, I am looking forward to the upcoming guests, and
yeah,
that's going to be fun.
Cool. Good time. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It was, I'm super glad the election went the way it did, and I'm super excited about the future. Man, I feel like we're going to see God move like we've never seen him move before. It feels like we've been prepared for this day. It feels like now we're doing what God has trained us all to do, and it's going to be fun.
Yep.
So with that, God bless you guys. Shalom, shalom. Have a good evening. Take care.
Bye, everybody.